And welcome back to another edition of the Blue Review. I'm Parker Bell, joined by Marcus Grant, and no corporate Greg today, Marcus. Out and about doing corporate Greg stuff. But before we get started, I mean, we got a lot to get into. We're gonna react to the Mets series. You know, we lost the series, but they showed some life.
Yes.
You got Yamamoto kind of on the mound. We got to get into that a bit. Glasnow showed he could and is the ace, and a little bit more maybe moving forward. So we'll get into all that. I don't know. We'll see how everything goes without Greg. I mean, sometimes, Greg's that nice little buffer, and I think the last time we did it together, it was really good. So
it went really well. So let's hope for that again.
Yeah. Before we get into everything, welcome to the chat, everyone. Of course, let me remind all of you that the Blue Review here is presented by our friends at LAX, Los Angeles International Airport. It's just changing. The changes are arriving daily. They're saving us time, reducing traffic, and transforming that experience, that travel experience. So if you want to know more, check it out at flylax.com/transforminglax. So yesterday, Marcus, that's what we're going to get into. The positives, 10-0. Go ahead, give me your first initial thoughts on the game.
Yeah, man. I think you mentioned before the show, somebody called it the mouthwash game, which I think is a perfect description of it, because you just had such a bad taste in your mouth from Friday and Saturday. And this sort of erased that. Like it felt like everything we had been worried about with this team over the last week, it's sort of, at least for one day, it all came together in a positive way. You mentioned Glasnow. They needed length out of one of their starters. He gives them 8 shutout innings with 10 strikeouts. He looked like the stopper that they needed. We were worried about, the bottom part of the order hitting, and we saw guys at the bottom part of the order get on base, right? I mean, that big 8-run rally was the 5th, 6th inning. It was
Fifth.
Pages that started it, by getting on base with a double. Lux gets a walk. You see all these guys just keep the line moving. They turn it back over for the top of the order, and you get the big hitters, right? You get Freddie with the double. You get Will Smith driving in runs. Even stuff like Shohei hitting with men in scoring position. I mean, he had that. It was an infield hit. Like, it didn't drive in a run, but he hit the ball hard, and it went off the pitcher's leg or whatever, turned into an infield single. It's him hitting with men in scoring position. The defense actually looked a little bit better. It's funny too, because it's always funny to me when you think something or you say something and then the announcers say like the same thing, basically, like out loud. There's a point during that game where Gavin Lux fielded a ground ball and got the out at first. And I thought to myself, he's actually looking a lot better defensively right now. And no sooner did I have that thought when Joe Davis was just like, Gavin Lux is starting to put it together defensively at second base right now. So that made me feel good about what I was seeing there. So yeah, I mean, all the problems that we had talked about with this team for the last week, at least for one day, they put together. I would say this was probably their best game, their most complete game of the season. Pitching, hitting, defense all came together, and it came at the right time when they needed to end the skid, and now they're about to go out on the road, so hopefully they can kind of keep this momentum going.
Yeah, by far their best game. I mean, Glasnow, first this year, Dodgers started to go, I think it was 8 innings, and then really only like I think 8th time a Dodgers starter has even gone 6. So it was great to see that, 10 Ks and 8 scoreless innings, absolutely shoved and looked like the guy that we wanted out there. And you're looking at the other 2 games. Saturday was closer. The offense was still kind of going, and we can get into that a little more. But I think there's some promising signs, and the fact that we saw it all come to fruition yesterday was huge. Maybe we could get into Glasnow just a little bit more. That performance yesterday, and then you look at not the last game, of course, he gave up, I think it was 4 to 6 runs. I think the 6 maybe. I lost track, but the one before that, he went 88 pitches with all those strikeouts. So he's not that to say that he's going on a roller coaster. I think he's more good than bad. How are you feeling so far about Glasnow to start the season off?
No, so far I'm feeling pretty good about him. I mean, you mentioned that one start he had against Washington. He gave up the 6 runs in 5 innings, and it turns out he was sick. Like, he was not feeling great that day. And so I think that contributed a lot to it. And I think as you look at his other starts, right, I mean, he comes out and he's nails against the Cardinals, right, has a good enough start against the Giants, giving up 3 runs in 6 innings. They get the win there. Then obviously the lights out start against the Twins in Minnesota with a 14 strikeout. So really the only true hiccup here is that game against the Nationals when he wasn't feeling well. So I think that just sort of solidifies the idea that this guy really is the ace that they were looking for when they signed him. So that as long as he stays healthy, and I guess that means, respiratory and arm, that that he's going to be that guy. And like you said at the start, he came up with a start that they desperately needed when they desperately needed it. He gave the bullpen pretty much the day off. Now they get an off day to travel, so everybody should be ready to go by the time they land in DC on Tuesday. So hopefully this round, hopefully they can do to the Nats in Washington what the Nats did to the Dodgers out here in LA.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we talked about it, I think, earlier in the show. The comparison to, and I know this is like not straight one-on-one comparison, but just with certain things in context, Glasnow to Kershaw when it comes to being that, what do we call it, stopper kind of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Mets were on a 6-game win streak. Glasnow came in, absolutely dealt, stopped that win streak, and gave the Dodgers exactly what they needed. So we're seeing signs that he could be that stopper, like you said, respiratory and arm injuries aside. So looking at actually, no, I want to stay on Sunday. I want to stay on the positives.
All right, let's do it.
This weekend was tough, especially for Lakers fans. Sticking with the positives, Shohei Ohtani, of course, breaks the all-time record for most home runs by a Japanese-born player. He broke the tie with Hideki Matsui. There's another Japanese-born record coming up soon that Coach Dave Roberts will be paying attention to.
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani finding the groove, like you said in the beginning of this episode, hitting with runners in scoring position. Just go ahead and let you kind of talk about Shohei right now and his greatness. I don't know.
Yeah, man. And no, but really, I mean, it's just sort of coming together, right? I mean, we talked about it before, how he was pressing, trying to hit that first home run. Then it happened. And then like once that happened, the floodgates sort of opened with him just generally hitting. And then now the next thing is him hitting with guys in scoring position or hitting with guys on base. And look, right now the number doesn't look good, but I think all three of us sat here on the show and said, we're not worried about it. He's too good. He has been too good for too long for us to seriously worry about it. So, seeing that happen over the weekend, seeing him start to hit the ball with guys on base is refreshing. And it just kind of reminds you, like, look, I think the thing that's constant that we keep saying, that we will keep saying, is it is a long season. And right now, like this past week was bad. I was amused, kind of reading the LA Times and reading some of the blogs and seeing some of the comments from fans where it's like, this is terrible. We got to blow it up. Yeah. Dave Roberts needs to be fired. I even saw stuff like Shohei's not worth the money. I'm like, what are we doing here? Right? Like everything's going to be fine. And to your point, though, he's got 5 home runs right now. The Dodger record for most home runs by a Japanese-born player is Dave Roberts at 7. I mean,
I don't know. Maybe he won't. Well, can he get to it?
I said he could break that by the end of the week. If he gets hot, he can break that by the end of the week. I suspect he's going to not only have that record, he's going to put some distance between himself and everybody else on that list.
Yeah, and to kind of play devil's advocate here, just because obviously Shohei's been a huge topic of runners in scoring position and ups and downs, whatever the over exaggerations. To kind of play devil's advocate here, he did have a quote after the game in regards to that home run and breaking the record. He was like, honestly, I was just relieved I was able to get it over with. I know he said it through his interpreter, Will Ireton. So my question to you, and kind of looking forward towards like the playoffs and stuff, getting ahead of ourselves here, is this theme maybe going to be something that we will worry about with Shohei when it comes to big performances? And, like you said, he was trying to push a little too hard to get whatever it may be in the playoffs. Maybe it's like his first playoff home run or his first walk-off hit. The strikeouts were an issue, early in this season, kind of still are for the whole team in general. But is this going to be something to worry about?
I mean, maybe a little bit. Like I wouldn't put a whole lot of brain power or energy into worrying about it specifically. But I think though that sort of speaks to the clubhouse atmosphere and the guys you have in that clubhouse. I mean, that's why I said a guy, for instance, like Kike is sort of nice to have around, because he's that guy who can kind of keep it loose, but at the same time, like kind of bring that energy and fire you up. It's not a thing that I think Freddie Freeman's going to do. It's not a thing that Mookie Betts is going to do. Their play will speak for itself, but they're not the kind of guys who are going to go in the locker room or in the dugout and just like fire you up and just give these speeches. So I think Kike is there. I think, when you have a healthy Jason Hayward, I think he's one of those guys who, sort of knows what to do, right? you need those players who know like who needs a kick in the butt and who needs a pat on the back. And I think just kind of having those guys beyond just the coaching staff, I think is going to make a big difference. So, I think Shohei is who he is. He is going to want to play big in those big moments, and that's why you pay him that kind of money, because he can do that. But when he does have those occasional slumps, like everyone does, you need those other guys around him to just pick him up a little bit and say, hey, man, like, we just need you to lock in. Like, we know who you are. We know what you can do. Just go out there and play ball. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of something like, yeah, we get it. He wants to make a huge impression in Los Angeles, and it's why everybody loves him and wants to love him. But at some point, it's also like, maybe we got to remind him too, it's a long season and you have a long contract, right? Like you don't have to win. You can't win the World Series in April. So like, let's not try. Let's just kind of let this thing flow, and we'll get to where we need to get to.
Yeah, we got to throw you in the dugout. Ohtani, you got to hear this. But listen, speaking of milestones, I just wanted to, and I see the chat doing so as well, give Andy Pages his flowers for his first MLB home run. Gosh, what a feeling that had to have been. I wonder what they did with the ball for that one.
I feel like it's not going to be a week-long story. That's right. Just a guess. But it was good. No, it was good to see it. And he smoked it too. I mean, he hit that thing to center field and just crushed it. And look, that's part of the reason he's here. It's because he's a guy with big power numbers. And it was nice to see him over the weekend really sort of lean into that. I mean, he got that hit on the very first pitch he saw. I think he was like 0 for a little bit, for a couple of days. But then to see that again on Sunday, he leads off that big rally with a double, comes back around, ends up hitting the home run, later on. So like, it was nice to see Pages get going. There were a lot of positives for all the bad that happened over the last week. There were some positives, right? I mean, Pages getting going, Shohei hitting a little bit more, Freddie Freeman starting to hit. We saw that on Saturday, even though they're in a loss. He drives in 3 runs, I think, that day, gets a couple of big hits in those situations. Then on Sunday, again, swinging the bat well. Whatever changes he's making, I know he's taken extra batting practice the last couple of days. It seems to sort of be paying off, at least the last 2 games or so. So that's a nice thing. Heck, man, even Chris Taylor got a hit on Friday night, right? Like, yes. I know they sort of squandered it. Yeah, man, but it was great. Like, I feel like the whole city of Los Angeles just breathed a sigh of relief on behalf
his sigh
of Chris
of relief
Taylor.
His sigh of relief was so massive. You could see him actually
massive.
It's like his soul just kind of came out for a second.
Yeah,
and
man.
He was like,
so that was good. I mean, I think there were a lot of positives here. And so you sort of hope that what Dave Roberts said is true, that it was just a bad week. I think there are things that we still need to kind of talk about. I think the bullpen still has holes in it. Hopefully that sort of closes up when Gratterall comes back. We'll see, when Trinan's able to come back and what he's able to do. So hopefully that puts a little bit of a Band-Aid on what that has been. I still think they need length. I know Greg's not as worried about it. I still think they need some length out of their starters. I just don't think you can survive a whole season having your guys just barely get through 5, maybe 6 innings. I think they need those guys who can occasionally get you at least 7. But for now, it seems to be working. So, we'll see how long this lasts.
Yeah, I mean, 13 and 11, but you brought up, I think, what to me is maybe the most jarring issue. I know Greg, like we said, isn't too worried, but they've pitched the most innings entering Sunday, at least in baseball, the bullpen that is. So, I think when Yarbrough is your innings leader outside of Yamamoto and Glasnow, and they had that Seoul series, to kind of already get that advantage, it's a little worrisome. But I think another issue, of course, was those strikeouts and those runners in scoring position. We could kind of tap into that because this weekend, outside of maybe, the first 3 guys we did see, and Sunday's an anomaly, they were themselves. They were the team that we recognize. Yeah. But all those negatives kind of did show themselves earlier in this weekend, and we saw those strikeouts. So just how are we feeling? I don't think any team in the majors has generated more opportunities with runners in scoring position. But the strikeouts are like almost 25 to 30% at the time. So what are you seeing that's kind of causing that issue?
So I don't know. This is a thing where I'm always going to be old man yelling at cloud. I know that strikeouts nowadays aren't as much of a scarlet letter as they were in the past. You've seen guys have big strikeout totals, and it just seems like, people analytically look at it and say, well, yeah, it's a problem. It's not a huge deal. I believe in putting the ball in play. I just do. I think the more you put it in play, the more you put pressure on the defense to make plays, the more I think good things can happen. And so that's why I think Saturday was incredibly frustrating to have 4 bases loaded opportunities
10
and
walks.
10 they had 10 walks, they had 4 bases loaded opportunities, they had 6 strikeouts. I think they were 1 for 8 in those situations. I mean, it was just a bad
Mm.
deal. Um, I really just believe, like, put the ball in play, put it in the air, put it on the ground, just see what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if you are aggressive that way, I think it makes a difference. And I know we're like skipping. Let's skip ahead to the end of the book, right? Like, I just look at the teams in October that are successful, and it seems like they still play that fundamental brand of baseball where it is putting the ball in play. It is putting runners in motion. It is doing things to put pressure on pitchers, to put pressure on defenses. Those are the teams that seem to have the most success in the end. And so, I know a large part of the baseball watching population is going to look at me and say, "Nah, you're overblowing it." But I still think strikeouts are a net negative. You are not moving runners. You're not doing anything.
Yeah, I mean the biggest theme of, and if anybody listening or watching in remembers from last year, the biggest theme was, and I think Clinton Yates kind of maybe didn't coin this, but he used the theme of Maruko, which is, run manufacturers. I think it was oh gosh, I'm gonna have troubles thinking of the whole terminology right now. But the point is, yes, manufacturing those runs through, you know, whatever it may be. It could be an infield hit, it could be just a walk. All these things are just moving one batter at a time. And yeah, they're striking out at a clip that is insane right now.
Yeah.
And you hope that, that can kind of change, especially at the bottom of the order, because those are where you need to see the guys getting on base. I mean,
Yeah. And I think some of it will calm down. Look, Freddie Freeman has had a large number of strikeouts early in the season. That's uncharacteristic.
mhm,
I think that sort of calms down. You mentioned Shohei striking out a lot. I think that starts to calm down a little bit. I mean, look, some guys, Max Muncy's just going to strike out. That's just what it is. Chris Taylor,
TL.
even when he's hitting, is going to strike out. Like, that's just, even James Outman. Those guys are going to swing and miss a lot because that's just part of their game. But getting the other guys to put the ball in play a little bit more is going to be important. Sort of side note to this too. It's not a major issue. It's not a sky is falling issue, but Teoscar Hernandez has sort of slowed down, I think, quite a
Yeah.
bit from his start to the season, because he on Saturday he had a rough day at the plate on Saturday. A couple of big strikeouts with the bases loaded, just was not driving in runs. So, I mean, I knew we weren't expecting him to stay hot all year long, but it has been noticeable lately that he's kind of gone to a little bit of a slump.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's some jarring numbers. Raider Ruben in the chat. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I know he says the Dodgers going to lose their 5th series in a row. Looking forward. I mean, do you even see that happening?
I mean, I guess based on the way they played, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I want to believe that what we saw yesterday sparks something.
Hmm.
Um, and who knows? Maybe going on the road helps something too, right? Maybe it forces them to lock in and focus a little bit more. I think they turn this around. I think they get this series in Washington. I got to look at the road trips. I feel like it's a road trip that's pretty favorable for them. I mean, they got the Nats the next few guys, and they go to Toronto. Then they've got the Diamondbacks. So it's kind of mixed. But they got to pull it together, because when they come back home, it's 3 with the Braves, and those are going to be big.
Yeah, yeah, that's going to be a big series. I mean, so anything else out of this weekend, Marcus, that caught your eye that was kind of jarring that you kind of want to touch before we, one, start to head out of here, but two, kind of preview the next series?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still looking for just that lights out Yamamoto start.
Mm.
I think we talked about it last week, that we would be able to tell by the first inning sort of how things went. And, first inning I think was fine. It was like the second inning, I think, when things kind of got a little bit rocky. He gets you through 6 innings, 4 runs, 3 earned. It wasn't terrible. The 9 strikeouts were nice. Just, I still think we are looking for just that completely nails, like, man, he was really on point sort of start. And again, I think part of it is just efficiency that hasn't really been there. 99 pitches in 6 innings. That's a lot, man. Like, if he could get through 6 in, say, 80, 85 pitches, give him a
Hmm.
chance to go out for the 7th, I think that'd be nice. So I think it's coming. It just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Sticking real quick on just pitchers and maybe starting pitchers updates. I think somebody in the chat asked about Walker Bueller. So he did have his bobblehead night on the
He
20th.
did.
And I know that he's going to have another assignment in OKC on Wednesday. I think they're playing in Albuquerque. And then after that, the next three starters are probably Paxton, Knack, and Yamamoto again. So
Yeah.
potentially we might
Hopefully
see
soon.
Bueller back. Yeah.
It sounds like it may be pushed back a little bit just because his starts in rehab have not particularly been great. I think
Mm-hmm.
his last one, he only went a couple of innings. He walked a lot of guys, gave up a couple of runs. Um, I would say that, I would not be excited if I were him or if I were the Dodgers to have him starting in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
That is a place that is not great for pitchers. Elevation, it's like Denver sort of on steroids. So that part is not really exciting. But more importantly, if he can just get his control down, if he can get some swings and misses, just reduce or eliminate the walks, I think that goes a long way. But I know that they're not really excited by what they've seen from him so far in his rehab starts.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll keep an eye out for that. One more question from the chat, real quick, to kind of end this out. This is a Doc question. So from Top Load'em Cards, Marcus, he asks, "How do you guys feel about Roberts doing a a change with the lineup? I think, yeah, change with the lineup, switching in groups of players based on lefty righty matchups. How are you feeling about that?"
I get it, because the guys he's moving out are guys who generally, like James Outman struggles against left-handers. So I sort of get Gavin Lux struggles against left-handers. So I sort of understand that. I think the top four, probably top five guys are going to stay steady. We're going to see Mookie, Shohei, Freddie, Will, Max. I think those are pretty much going to be steady. I think it's from 6 on down where you start to see a little bit more movement. So I sort of get it. It would seem less egregious if, Kike were hitting, if Chris Taylor were hitting better,
Mm-hmm.
then it wouldn't look quite as bad. So let's keep our fingers crossed that sort of happens. Until then, like I don't see him changing that platoon situation.
Yeah, and I mean, only as you move forward, more options are going to come even more as Jason Hayward starts to get back to being healthy. And, like you said, once those guys start hitting. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how he does that moving forward. But he's stuck to a system. And hey, listen, they may have lost 4 out of the last 5 series, but they are still hanging on to first place,
Still
Marcus.
in first place, man.
So while some people may have thought the sky was falling this last week, let's see how they do as they head onto this road trip. Marcus Grant, we're going to kind of end it here. I think that this was a great episode again with that
Yeah,
corporate
man.
Greg. So we'll report back. I know he'll be watching, tuning in. So thank you for joining us. I know might not be there tomorrow, Marcus, but you will be with us the rest of the week.
For sure, the rest of the week, even on NFL draft week, man. Like
That's right.
that's not till the evenings. I got time in the morning, so I'll definitely be here.
Marcus Grant grinding for us. Of course, I've been Parker Bell. Thank you to LAX. This has been the Blue Review. We'll be back tomorrow, and I think Corporate Greg will be back. We'll see. All right. Thank you very much, and we'll catch